Hello, this is Mr. Maximus Film. I'm back again with another album review. My last album review was Jimi Hendrix's X as Bold as Love. Go check that out if you wish. But today, or it's the same day actually, but right now I'm doing Radiohead's Kid A, released 2000. Currently my favorite album of all time. I'm going to tell you why. It was released 3 years after OK Computer. The album after OK Computer, but it's not remembered as that album after that other album. It's remembered as Kid A. And it's very it contrasts a lot with OK Computer in terms of the minimalist of the music. The music isn't as proggy as OK Computer. It's much more minimalist and electronic, as most people know. It has an overbearing electronic influence, in my opinion. It's not a electronic album. It's not, the entire thing is not electronic, but there's a humongous electronic influence, much more than OK Computer. And even the artwork is much more dark and much more chaotic, even more so than OK Computer. But anyway, to the music. It's, like I said, very minimalist. Not a lot, there's a lot going on, but it's sort of Pink Floydian in the sense that it's layered, it feels full, but yet at the same time, there's not that many chord changes, there's not a lot of solos, there's not a single guitar solo in this entire album, which on the Bends and OK Computer was a big part of Radiohead, the Johnny Greenwood guitar solo. You don't find that on this album. And even when they do use guitar, they use it only as texture. And, like in Optimistic, which is the guitar song on this album, it's the guitar, there's not a solo, it's only for texture. I mean, it's just about layering, it's just about the texture. And this album can get very intense in some points. But what they do is, the first 4 songs on the album, Everything in Its Right Place, Kid A, National Anthem, How to Disappear Completely, are very intense. They're very overbearing in terms of their experimentalism. You get taken by surprise by them, especially if you were listening to this in 2000 after OK Computer. You get very taken aback by the whole thing. And then what they do is they put Tree Fingers right there. And then it serves as a tension breaker. It breaks the tension with this ambient soundscape. And it sort of lets you relax and ponder what you just listened to. It's very cool, in my opinion. It's a very good approach. It's a very well-constructed sort of thing to do. And it lets you just calm down and contemplate what you just thought and gather your thoughts in this very peaceful, sort of calming atmosphere. And they would do that again after Motion Picture Soundtrack, which just has this very long silence that's very eerie and very tension-breaking as well. It breaks the tension of the entire album, only to be reimbursed again with that little electronic, I can't just say electronic, but that little burst of color at the end of the album, the untitled hymn track, and then only to have another minute of silence to let you ponder about that. There's a lot of pondering moments in this album, which I think is a unique way of doing things. But yeah, the first 4 tracks, everything, the lyrics on this album, especially in like Everything in Its Right Place, and Morning Bell, are very fragmented. The lyrics don't really go together in a traditional sense. You really have to think about it. They're very fragmented, and there's a lot of distortion going around with Tom York's voice, because everybody was trying to imitate Radiohead at this point, like Coldplay and all those other alternative bands that were copying Radiohead in a sense. And so Radiohead said, we're not going to be ourselves anymore. We're going to distort, Tom York said, I'm going to distort my voice. I'm sick of it. And so there's a lot of distortion. In the background, you can often hear, another like lyric that Tom York is saying, but it's very distorted and fragmented, and which contrasts to the lyrics he is actually saying clearly in the front. It's very weird. It's hard to describe, but it's very fragmented. A lot of distortion, especially on the song Kid A itself. which is this sort of lullaby, very eerie sort of lullaby motif going on through that creates this eerie feel, and his vocals are put through a vocoder sort of thing, I think. And it's very distorted, and you can't really understand what he's saying because the lyrics are so disturbing that he wants to distort them. And then on Morning Bell, the lyrics, like, it's much stream of consciousness in terms of the lyrics. It's very spouting and very nonsensical and very schizophrenic in terms of the lyrics, which creates this very eerie feel. It's a very schizophrenic album. There's, all the lyrics are sort of jumbled together, and they're not really to be taken by themselves. They're to be taken as part of the entire thing. They're to be taken as part of the atmosphere going on. There's a lot of different influences in there. Each song is completely different. Like Everything in Its Right Place and Kid A are both very electronic. Then it gets into the national anthem, which has this sort of bass riff going throughout the entire thing. It creates this very sort of totalitarian feel to it, in my opinion. Sort of this dystopian feel to the song. And, the lyrics are they're often repetitive lyrics. They're just the same phrase over and over again. And it's a good kind of repetitive. It's a good sort of repetitive. It doesn't get boring because the music going around the words is so changing and so weird. It keeps you on your toes. And then that's what happens with the national anthem. It's just this repetitive bass riff and this repetitive voice. But yet at the same time, there's much atmosphere, so many keyboards, so many sound effects that are going around it that makes it very interesting. And of course, you have the brass section, which creates this sort of chaotic feel at the end. So this dystopian, jazzy, chaotic feel, which is very odd to listen to. Very dissonant in some places, like in How to Disappear Completely is this acoustic ballad wrapped around in dissonance, which is it creates this very interesting atmosphere. And the strings on that song, the orchestra on that song is beautiful. It's very layered, it's very sweeping. Tree Fingers breaks the tension, gets into optimistic, sort of that guitar-y sort of song, but yet at the same time there's no guitar solos, and the guitar really isn't the emphasis. It's just the whole song that's the emphasis. And then it flows straight into in Limbo, my favorite song on the album, because it starts out with this frantic keyboard solo, pardon me, and then it gets into this very rolling, sort of wavy, arpeggiated, layered guitar sound with Tom York's vocals, very distorted in some places, and it sounds very soaring and high. It's just beautiful. And then at the end of In Limbo, he just wails this very waily sort of screech, and it's very beautiful. It's very dissonant at the same time. It's just abstract. It's so grand. It's just amazing. Then we get into Idiotech, which is a take on electronic dance music, as I was saying before, with this electronic beat running throughout it, and a sample of some computer music that was done in the 1970s. Then it gets into Morning Bell, which is very stream of consciousness, very repetitive, same drum beat going throughout. It creates this sort of Alzheimer's sort of feel. It kind of feels like old age, sort of, dotage, sort of old age ramblings. And then it gets into Motion Picture Soundtrack, which is this feel, like it breaks the tension in and of itself. And it's very grandiose, and it's grandiose, rather, and trying to emulate, Disney soundtracks from the old Disney movies, and it's very lullaby-ish as well. And at the end, you get the silence, and then this burst of, sounds and colors comes at you, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and then it ends, and then it just lets you take time to think about what you just listened to. 5 out of 5. I'm running out of time, but I would give this album a 5 out of 5. Absolutely gorgeous. This is Mr. Maximus Film. This is Kid A. Wish I could talk more about it, but I have to end this now. So see you later.